Welcome back, fellow armchair generals, to Panzer Corps. And of course, we're sort of playing the Battle of Stalingrad, or the campaign around Battle of Stalingrad. So good to see you here. And just in case you want to know, that yes, this is one of the Matrix / Slytherin games that you should be giving a thumbs up to, like the video, and post a comment below for the contest to win some Slytherin games rules announced on the Hearts of Iron 3 game. Okay, let's continue this. Now these guys here, they now have armored forces. Well, let's... Okay, yeah, that's... I want to take this down because it's a victory province, and also let's make it weaker. That doesn't look promising. That doesn't look promising. Let's retreat. Let's move up the engineers. That still doesn't look promising. Okay, like I said, that is not promising. What I think we're going to do is we're going to take these guys out and then continue with bombarding that into submission. Okay, you guys, move east, move east. KV1, right? They're sort of hurting, no ammo. Okay, first, we can take the damage, as much as we can. Okay, I didn't like that I retreated, but oh well. Oh, we probably should have used air power. That was my fault for not using air power to kill it. Okay, well, now that you do have, that's an anti-aircraft gun, but I don't think overly effective. Well, we're gonna resupply, or yeah, just resupply them. Okay, yeah, that doesn't look overly useful. Okay. Okay, and now fly away up to the airbase to get refueled. You guys are on your last sort of supply, but you have enough fuel to get back, I do think. So let's see if we can kill this. Very good. Okay, so we've taken that out. Not sure. Oh, you're in need of fuel, so you guys come down here. Escort. Come back here and try to escort there. Okay, that's good. Oh yeah, guys here. Thinking that the way was open here. Very well. Kill them. Romanian infantry. Do we want to? Romanian. or Hungarian. Okay. Oh, it doesn't really matter, I guess. Ooh, completely taking them out. Sure, we'll swing around this way. Cutting off reinforcements. Okay, good. Messing them up some. Now, do we have any enemy air power up? Oh, we do right there. Okay, yeah. Don't think there's anti-aircraft here, but we will find out. Oh, for outstanding service, Christian Hoffman from the 24th Fighters was distinguished as a hero of the war. Attack +1 for the unit. Very good. Okay, that is useful. Well, oh, we have these guys here. Okay, the armor configuration to kill them. Good. What I'm thinking of doing is moving these guys all the way up here. Now they're ouch. That didn't work out so well, did it? Okay, they got artillery sitting back here. Riverboat guarding the river, so this is going to be something of a hardish fight, like I was somewhat worried about. Okay, yeah. Okay, and like I said before, we're going to try to cut them off and swing around, and not just bash our heads into the front of this. To that end, I probably should move these guys eventually up and around. I don't know. Around and over or some such thing. Okay, so first shot somewhere artillery. Ouch, I didn't see that. Okay, that went a little better than I thought it might. Ah, for outstanding service, the 30th Panzers were awarded the Iron Cross 2nd class. Very good. Now you can stay right where you are. You just come up and offer fire support. Yeah, they've already moved. Yeah, might as well come up here. You, we're going to just resupply. You get elite reinforcements. Yeah, we can afford that. Okay, yeah, we'll, reinforce / resupply you. Okay, what units haven't we dealt with? Okay, these guys, they could move, but I have to see no point in moving them. They're gonna stay right where they are. Oh, these guys, yeah, let's keep moving forward. No, these guys, they get to stay right where they are. Now we're gonna wait a turn. They're staying where they are. Okay. Yeah, I'm a little worried about them. Counterattacks, okay. Okay, we're gonna withdraw away from that gun and just keep pounding it with the railway artillery. Retreat, run away, run away, run away. Yes, good, run away, run away, run away. Survive, survive. Damn, you didn't survive. Oh well, I pushed too hard with them. I'll need to make new ones. Which isn't really the problem, but I really like the idea of, we're going to coordinate that attack a little better. I really like the idea of getting higher quality as time goes on. Okay, so... Okay, well, let's be smart about this. You're out of... Oh no, let's make sure we're gonna okay. Now you can come up to here. Very good. Stronger, of course. I think they would have done much better, but still. Quite taken like I was hoping. There we go. I was hoping to then attack the railway gun, but that doesn't seem to be in the cards. But at least we took, what is that, Rostov, right, okay. Okay, we're just grinding it down, grinding it down. Save yourselves. There we go. And you guys get to move forward. Advance, advance, advance. Okay, so take the town. Oh, another one. For outstanding service, Bernard Meyer from the 30th Panzer says distinguished as a war hero. Spotting +1, very good. Get to see more things, that's nice. don't know that I want to move up. Like I say, I'm going to put pressure there, but it isn't going to be an all-out sort of thing. I'm hoping to learn lessons. Not exactly the results I wanted, but hey, there we go. Now you guys get to sort of, well, maybe we want to come up here. Well, I don't know. We'll think about that. Yeah, because we want to swing around and down, so let's come up to here, and one of these two places will become okay, these guys are going to we'll allow these guys to get more forward. Yeah, here I think these guys can survive, unlike the motorcycle infantry. Question, do we want to go there for 5 or there for 4? Well, if we take the airfield, it denies them the use of it, so oh well. We're gonna come back and get fuel for ourselves. We'll go after the bigger guns. We're just going to sort of hold there as a reinforcement, and here. So if they're attacked directly, they'll get some artillery fire support. Okay, you get to move up. Okay, what haven't we moved? Yeah, I know we haven't shot, but I'm not wasting my ammo on that. You're doing all right where you're at. Well, we might as well resupply you. Not good enough. We're gonna coordinate it a little better. Just in case somebody's trying to counterattack. Okay. Let's end the turn. Ouch. Ouch, don't die. Okay, we're going to make sure they don't die by delete reinforcing them. Spend a lot of power, and you're going to get resupply as a unit. Okay, we're going to keep pushing here though. I don't think these guys can be all the way to the front, but they can get to there. Yeah. You may get barraged again, but I think you'll do all right. Okay, railway gun. Oh, outstanding service. The 27th Martyrs were awarded Iron Cross First Class. Very good. No, we're not going to move you up just yet. Okay, you guys will walk up. See, I want to reinforce the rest of you so that you're not weak. Okay, you guys are good shape, but I don't want to. Okay, there we go. Okay, that cuts the railway there. Looking for guys who can sort of walk across. Okay, I know they're gonna. Ooh, I should have done air attack first, but oh well. Against the artillery, it was gonna have some support, but okay, yeah. Okay, well, we're pushing on that. Okay. I like using my armored cars aggressively. Okay, good, and that'll allow these guys to get fully worked up. Oh yeah, I was worried that something like that would wreck that division. But it didn't. Sort of messed that one up a bit. Okay, well that's doing all right. Well, okay, I think we'll end this turn. Yeah, you can pound them and you can even do them damage, but I don't think you're gonna kill them now. Very good, very good. Okay, good victory conditions. We're gonna keep moving forward. Now, down here. Yes, we may eventually start shooting at the ships. I want to get that. Victory. There we go. They're done, so at least they can't reinforce there. And I'm just going to move you out. There, you get to pick on somebody else. Probably the big railway guns, so it may not be the best move. Yeah, that's good. For outstanding service, the 41st Panzer Flammen was awarded Iron Cross Second Class. Very good. Yeah, I thought so, so we're not going to rush into combat there. We are going to come down here with that. You're going to get reinforced. Okay, it looks like that's empty, so we're going to rush in and take it. I think that was the infantry that came up and attacked. Here or whatever. Right, okay. Oh, we still have these guys to deal with. Very good, very good. Okay, well, we'll just move off the mark there so that these guys can come in and finish them off. Right, I know we have guys there. Well. I took them completely out. Very good. These guys reinforce. These guys advance. We'll get reinforcements soon. Is there any... No. Again, as we look at this history lesson time here. Generally speaking, these railroads are correct to my understanding. This is fabled Astrakhan, the very ancient trading city. And yes, there were, if you will, say seagoing, because this is a sea, the Caspian Sea, out there. Now they had set up, I think, a canal, maybe it was post-war, some sort of canal system that comes up through and connects somewhere in here, in and out, to get small ships that can go on the navigable rivers through here. But so there was definitely some sea connectivity here, but it's not major, and I don't know where, if anywhere, on further eastern shores that there's actual rail connections to then ship, whether it's ship units, reinforcements, supplies, food, whatever. And supplies are critical, ammo is critical, to ship those down to here, and then on railways, and then come via the ships. So had Germany, instead of they were pushing here, and this was sort of the goal, and this was sort of fill in, they were doing reasonably well here, coming across here, and thought that they would do that. So they rushed a lot of the mobile forces down this way to try to secure ultimately Baku, but also Grozny and whatnot. My comp up over here for oil. And that was sort of the glittering prize that they're all rushing towards. But had they just kept the panzers and mobile forces out of Stalingrad, that's the right decision. Keep them out of Stalingrad and bust north, taking this railway. So I think they did, at least into the city, effectively cut this railway. But had they come a little bit further north here, I know they were sort of holding along this river, but had they come north and taken these railways here, crossed the river here, and moved and taken this railway, in my opinion, that would have ended any real significant southern offensive, because and it's recently reminded it in another game that it was Uranus as the operation to counterattack and cut off the Stalingrad forces. So had you gotten here and cut this off, so you cut the river traffic off, you cut this off here at some point. Now you can still see the idea of thrusting down here. This may still happen, but of course you may try to come down this rail or river and try to thrust. But you can sort of see the road and railway, the idea that you can move in, coming into the winter for the winter counteroffensive, move into this zone to then hit along here. But if you've taken this, yeah, you can do a counteroffensive and take this. I'm not saying the Soviets were incapable of that. But that's where the counteroffensive, I think, would have been to try to retake, probably have to, at least retake the railways. Taking the river without also getting the railways, maybe you're cutting off the German force here. But really, if Germany can come and hold here, nothing's coming here of any massive force. This is just too undeveloped, particularly for railways. So you cut this off, so you're effectively, and like I say, there are coastal shipping. I'm sure they get some oil out. I don't know how much. I don't know how much this river is navigable. I don't. So I'm not saying that all this stuff is now, cut off, trapped, and pocketed. No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is one of the critical arms for coming around to cutting off the Stalingrad fighting force is, my opinion, again, because we don't know, and I don't know what was sitting down here. I don't know, maybe there was already huge supply sources. Why the hell there would be, I can't imagine. But before the Stalingrad campaign starts, were there huge supply sources sitting down here? Oh yeah, we just tons and tons of 122 millimeter artillery rounds and artillery rockets. The rockets are just stored down here for some reason. I just can't imagine that. I mean, there may be, but I can't imagine it. I don't think there were any major, massive arms factories down here. There may be some, but I just don't see that as being a real thing. So, and there may be a fair amount of forces in this area, but from what I understand, they shipped in a lot of the forces after, and so they were sort of just barely hanging on to Stalingrad when they could have put more forces in it, because they wanted to reinforce an attack from here, and they wanted to reinforce an attack from here. And the object was just to simply not fully lose in Stalingrad when the counterattack happen with the attempt to trap as many forces as you can. But if you've cut here and you've cut here, and of course anything along here, you've radically, and we can talk about how some of the sort of sacrificial forces were being sent into, you look at sort of the original Call of Duty game, sent in without weapons or ammunition, and the idea is well, you're going to, 20% of you have guns. Once the guys with guns die, somebody who doesn't have a gun, go pick up a gun and the ammo and continue to fighting. Oh, if you don't want to do that, you can line up over here and we'll machine gun you. So here's certain death or possible life that way, towards the Germans. And so they sent in really crappy forces, really, unprepared to fight, but just sort of the minimum into this fighting to keep this fighting going. But they couldn't, I don't believe, have effectively done even that had they taken, this northern sector here. And so I think it may have still been a costly battle, because cities are costly battles, especially if you're going to go in and fight them in that way. Still may have lost lots of German soldiers, trashed a bunch of German equipment, used up a whole bunch of supplies, ammo, whatnot. But I think they would have taken Stalingrad, which then would have the heavily Romanian and Italian, or Romanian flanking troops here that just were going to be not effective in fighting in Stalingrad. They might be somewhat effective in defending an area that they have a chance to dig into, but not in taking it. Well, now once you freed up all the troops that are here, you can move in, if you need to, you can move in some of these other forces just to occupy the zone here. And you can, an Italian division, German division, Italian division, Italian division, a German division, Italian, spread it out so you have some German forces here to deal with any counterattack that might happen. And yeah, sure, you may get a bulge, you may get, a salient coming in here, but I don't think you're going to have the Stalingrad disaster. I really don't think. And I don't know how long it would have. I'm not sure that the Germans could have held this, but though I think it's quite likely that they could have held up here against counterattacks. Because as we can look at it, Germany sort of revitalizing this railway system here so it can supply into here effectively. And so I don't know how long, but I do think it is quite possible for it to take the time and occupy down here. There's been a documentary that I've seen that particularly Baku was super heavily wired up with explosive to just destroy it and deny it to the Germans. Well, if you do that right, you can set the underground oil on fire in some cases and make it a permanent fire that will just, depending, and I don't know if the geography is right for this, probably not because of the way it was. Meaning there has to be sufficient amount of oxygen under the ground, and because there are some underground coal fires that have been raging for decades. There's one, it's either an oil or a coal fire in California. There's another coal fire, to me, back east, somewhere east of the Mississippi. But, that has, been going for 100+ years that somehow caught on fire. And there's just enough air oxygen going on deep underground. And so the whole town, whole old coal town is long abandoned. You can go there, I guess, and visit it or whatever, but it's basically unlivable to stay in. There's a huge underground fire raging. So yeah, if you blow it in one way, you could theoretically, in my mind, permanently destroy the oil supplies. But I don't know if the geography is right for it. But you can set it on fire so that all the oil that, and if it is artesianing, those of, and I do know that I'm dealing with people that English isn't the first language, and it's not a bad thing. It's just that artesianing is sort of like a natural spring. It's coming up once you drill the oil. Like when you first drill oil wells, you see in some of the movies, the oil spurts out of the ground, and you got to cap it really quickly. And then all you do is put some valves on it and let it flow into barrels. That's artesianing. At some point that stops, and then you got to get the pump to pump the oil out of the ground. If the oil is artesianing, and I know it was at times and in locations down in that part of the world, that would just stay on fire until you put the fire out. And I don't know how good the Germans would have been at putting the fire out. It's very possible. It's generally done by explosives. You may think putting fire out by explosives is not the way to do it, but you sort of blow the fire out, meaning you blow away all of its oxygen and everything else, and so a big enough explosion takes it out, and it's just on the surface, it's not underground. So you're sort of moving in, you know, nitroglycerin off, at least in the olden days. They probably have better explosives today. Nitroglycerin that's sort of in the form of dynamite, so it's sort of stable, keeping it, you know, pouring water on it, get it in there, get close enough to it, and then you just blow it. And so you, with force, you're pushing the flame and everything else away, including the oxygen temporarily, away from the fire. And then, so the fire goes out, and then you go in and cap it. So it, but destroying, but even if you don't do that, though I do think they would have caught the surface fuel on fire, you're going to wreck the infrastructure to get it out of the ground, effectively put it into railway cars, because you're blowing up some of the railways and you're doing all this, you know, all the mechanisms. But I think Germany over time is entirely capable of revitalizing the Baku oil fields and the Grozny and the Maikop fields. So if the war is going on long enough, and if they can hold down here long enough, I think they get the oil going, and I think that oil, along with the synthetic oil, is enough to keep Germany effectively in the war. I may be wrong about that. Notice I said effectively. Not that they got America's standards of oil, including the modern America standards of oil, because we're now a massive oil exporter again. And we have huge reserves of oil to go for a long time, until we find out new ways to get more oil out of the ground. So yeah. And so probably some of these Baku and other oil fields could probably be revitalized too, but that's another thing. So Germany, I think, could have gotten that enough oil, keep them in the war, to keep them fighting, to keep their submarines operating, to keep their aircraft operating, keep the tanks and everything else operating. I think they could have. Now, of course, if we look to pull out the geography, do the Americans get involved in supporting the British and push up from Iran? Very well, maybe. Turkey, I think, wants to stay out of the war, so that sort of actually, to a degree, helps Germany out down here. But until, because I don't think the British are in any situation at this time to push north out of Iran, because the Soviets do grab the northern third or so of Iran, the British half to a third. The British get the other half to 2/3 of Iran, mostly in their temporary control. But that's just sort of occupation forces, and it's, I think, a lot of Indian Army units that are, you know, trained but not overly well equipped. And not that they aren't going to be able to effectively, I think they might have effectively been able to move on to the defensive in Iran, but I don't know if they're going to be able to go on the counteroffensive even against fairly light German forces in here, because as you can see from the geography, you just sort of got to hold down here, and then mountain troops and a few other, you know, types sort of skeletally that, yeah, I don't even know if this game is going to allow us to move like units through here. I don't know if this becomes impassable terrain or just super slow, because these are high mountains. These are, you know, we've got forests, mountains. These are hills over here, mountains, and then high mountains. I don't know what. I've not played the Panzer Corps and had this. But so you can see that effectively, you know, there may be some ability to supply and move through here and whatnot, but you effectively limit the abilities of doing, you know, massive American-style allied movements with lots of supplies, lots of motorized troops. Not that the Americans, once they're here and built the rail, because I don't know if you know this, but Iran made sure that the railways stopped, I don't know, I mean, just throw out a number, 5 miles, 10 miles from the coast, because they didn't want them to be used as invasion ways. Don't know when they finally extended it out, but this was earlier on. They built a bunch of railways in Iran, but they made sure they didn't quite go to the coast, and they wanted to use that as a defensive measure sort of internally. So I don't know if they made it to the coast at this time, but that would be fairly easy for the Americans particularly, but even the British to come in, and once they take it, to finish the last few miles to the coast and effectively set the rail system up to move to, at least into central Iran. There is at this time, like it sort of shows here, no rail. Well, there is a rail system here, but I don't think it goes into Iran. I may be mistaken on that, but I don't think it does. But you know, eventually the Americans, with its industrial might and its construction might, can come down here and create another front. But it's a limited front. But being America, they could probably overwhelm the Germans, especially if the Germans are still getting hammered, you know, on the Eastern Front. It's not necessarily, for a time, like I say, I think it becomes a, you know, area of just sort of occupation and control. So yeah, that is very much my idea of what coulda, shoulda, and I guess it's just the glittering prize of the oil. And I'm not going to give it to, you know, because I think Hitler was a terrible general, terrible general, terrible military planner, terrible. I know I've gotten some flack from Hitler fanboys on that. Not that they're necessarily like his policies, but they think he's better. Hitler understood German politics very well. He understood it instinctively very well, German politics. He thought he understood international politics, sort of and is taking it in sort of the wake of World War I. And, you know, I would say German politics still extends into getting Austria, but because it's sort of German Austria, but he mistakes his you know, his international politics, and he looks like he bluffs and pushes. He wants a war with Czechoslovakia, but he desperately wants France and Britain to stay out of it, and of course Italy to stay out too. You know, not coming in against him. His big worry with Italy was sort of solved in Austria, but he was still a little worried with Mussolini. I mean, Mussolini was becoming a friend, but not yet completely. It's sort of the Munich conference really sort of cements the friendship there, in my opinion. But so he really wants to get international agreement that he can have his war with Czechoslovakia. Well, he doesn't get it. He gets the Sudetenland, and this sort of upsets Hitler. And had he stopped on Czechoslovakia at that time, he would have read international policies right, because his push for Sudetenland alarms France and Britain, and they, you know, they're offered by some German high command officers, I think including Halder, the idea that, hey, you just attack us and just do some sort of offensive, and all we have to do, you just do a little bit of offensive, and then we'll do a coup and get rid of this Hitler guy for you. You don't have to have a big war. We won't fight you desperately. You just have to not just declare war, but you have to actually like go on the offensive, not just like, oh, we're in a state of war, and then, you know, not do anything. You'd have to fight a battle or two, and then we'll throw out Hitler. And the Allies don't go for that, and because France is maybe not emotionally prepared, but they've got a fairly big military. Britain is not prepared for it, so Britain doesn't go for this. So Britain, Chamberlain, you know, advises Czechoslovakia to give in on the Sudetenland, but that alarms everybody, including the French, and more so that everybody starts, you know, the Czechs even more so continue arming, not rearming, but arming. The British and the French are rearming more, and they're doing this up there. But had he been satisfied with just the Sudetenland, I know that's not his long-term goals, but his short-term goals, had he just been satisfied with that, left the rest of Czechoslovakia exist, and then, you know, push in Memel, which he gets easy, pisses people off, but he can get that easy, and then push for the Polish or the Danzig corridor to get his war with Poland, probably would have worked. I may be wrong on that. Again, I don't know. But I think with Chamberlain, it would have, because look, we haven't taken any more Czechoslovakia. It's only these Poles that are being unreasonable about giving back German territory. That's all that is. They're being unreasonable. And have the Soviet Union come in to send in a peacekeeping force to secure the eastern part of Poland, probably would have kept the Western Allies out of going to war with Germany at that time, and so that you only start the war once, because Hitler's planning on a war with France and Britain. He wants to avenge World War I. Doesn't want to conquer Britain and rule the British Empire. That is not in Hitler's thinking. And Hitler does want to have a victory parade in Paris, but really long term isn't really thinking about owning France. Becomes a bit more of a reality after he does sort of own most of France, and some of his people like Himmler and others that want to sort of own France, but he really isn't trying to own France. Adjust the borders back to at least, pre-World War I borders with France, and things like that. But make France pay for everything that it did to Germany during World War I, but also, post World War I. So massive indemnities and, resources to the Reich and all this other stuff. Yeah, not looking good for France, but he's not really trying to own France. He just wants to defeat them to show, yeah, we beat your ass, kind of thing. That's what he's looking for there. And so he wants a war when he's ready. Now, so this is where he makes his big mistake. He is not ready for the war in 1939. Just clearly not ready for the war. They don't have enough submarines from the plans, don't have even a fraction of the Navy they expect to have. They expect to have, I don't know whether get rid of, but replace all of those Panzer 1s and those Panzer 2s and the Panzer battalions of the Panzer divisions. They might still, especially the Panzer 2s, might be lingering around as, reconnaissance tanks, as part of various armored formations. They might be lingering around in training centers, especially the Panzer 1s. Not that the Germans aren't going to be wasteful and just throw them away, but they weren't going to be frontline tanks as they were used as frontline tanks in the invasion of France. So they were clearly not prepared for World War I. And there's also a lot of other structural elements of Germany that weren't prepared, that they were planning on being prepared. Elements like building more, because they had started before 36, because I've looked into it, building synthetic fuel plants. But the first semi-synthetic fuel plant, commercial level, and it's only limited use, sort of comes online in 36. They've been doing, ever since World War I, and realizing that they need oil and that they're trapped, they've, even under the Weimar Republic, they've been researching synthetic, because they got lots of coal. It's liquefying coal into usable liquid fuels is basically what they were looking into. And so they've been looking into it. So they've started sort of in 36 and sort of commercial levels, but it's commercial, but it's like, oh yeah, we're making gasoline at I don't know, 5 marks a gallon. We're selling it at a mark a gallon. So they're losing. It's literally like that. They're losing like a lot more. But it was more important to simply start an attempt at working up how to industrially scale making fuel at critical times. So they were willing to sell it at a loss to the public, just to have the process working. So they at a massive loss. So they're working on all of this going on. So they know they're not ready for a sustained war. And so this is what happens. Now, obviously, we know what happened in history and that they take down France. But they still aren't prepared for a sustained war. So since Britain doesn't collapse, Britain holds in there, it's driving Germany to... With just Britain, it's not driving to defeat. But Hitler is... power hungry, power mad, whatever, and decides to take on the Soviet Union. Had it just sort of been sort of a frontiers war, shall we say, meaning aircraft flying over each other's borders, submarines and ships fighting out at sea, fighting in North Africa, and out in the colony fronts like that, you might have been able to keep the Americans out of the war. They were going to like the British, and they were going to send all kinds of supplies, but actually keep them out of the war. And so Hitler could have spent a few years getting oil coming in from the Soviet Union, getting those kind of supplies coming in from the Soviet Union, building up their capacity to take on the Soviet Union and whatnot, but they don't do that. So Hitler's unprepared. So Hitler doesn't get international politics well enough. He thinks his sort of threat politics are good enough. So he really doesn't get that either. So I'm not, Hitler's good at a few things, but a bunch of other stuff he's just really, really bad at, is my assessment. And if you want to post below, tell me why I'm wrong at some of this, you can, but that's my analysis of the situation. Well, this has gone on episode long enough. I want to thank you all for watching. Thanks for liking the videos. And of course, liking and posting will be one of two Slytherin/Matrix types videos that you'll need to do for the contest to get to win one of 3 games that or DLC things that we're giving away. So thanks so much. See you next time for more historical gaming.